You're among the early catalysts in K-12 and community-based service learning. Among them in your group are Diane Hedin, Dan Conrad, Cynthia Parsons, Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, Carol Kinsley, and John Briscoe, to name a few. I'm sure there are others.
Oh, there are, yes.
We would love to hear your perspectives on those early days of transitioning from community service to service learning and what that was like in your experience.
It was very exciting as we began to really see this was curricular and we could really go in and work with schools and teachers, and it was also challenging. Cynthia Parsons, as an example, worked in Serve Vermont, and Cynthia used to call me all the time and say, Kathy, you really need to do more curriculum work with what's going on in Los Angeles Unified. And I say to Cindy, how many high schools do you have in all of Vermont? And she'd say, 29. I'd say, okay, Cynthia, this is Los Angeles Unified School District. You know, we have 39 just in Los Angeles Unified School District, not to mention the special high schools, not to mention LA County is 90 school districts. It's going to take me a little longer than Vermont, you know. So people were very impatient and really wanting to embrace this service learning concept. But we had a lot of people to educate, a lot of people to bring on board, and that was really critical. And that was part of the work at the Constitutional Rights Foundation in the late 80s, was really doing that. And through those series of conferences around the country, and several key things happened. David Hornbeck became superintendent of schools in Maryland and passed still the only state that mandates service learning as a graduation requirement. And he brought on Kathleen Kennedy Townsend as the person to run that. And as you know, that's Robert Kennedy's eldest daughter. And so Kathleen actually called me. We had 2 institutes running at the same time, 5-day institutes to develop materials that would support service learning in elementary schools and also with a special population. I will say right here now for any record that I had very little to do with the special needs population because they had a woman there who was brilliant on the topic, and any credit I got for that was probably not deserved. However, with the elementary school program, we were able to really shape what this could look like, and these were the beginning days of discovering the process of how service learning would really work. Now, I will tell you a story that is an overlap between working with Kathleen, who I absolutely admired in what she was doing. It was very difficult to go around the state of Maryland and say, okay, everybody's going to do service learning now. And everybody's going, what? You know, what is this? And so she had this very challenging mandate to bring forth. And so she worked very hard to do quite a bit and make it really successful. And she was really true to service learning, not community service. At the same time, I'd left the Constitutional Rights Foundation and had gone to this organization called StarServe. And I don't know if you've heard of StarServe, but it was an organization that actually was a brainchild of Mike Love of the Beach Boys. So I have to give Mike Love a little shout out. He got funding from Kraft General Foods Foundation to do this program that would seed service learning around the country. And we involved celebrities, which a lot of the serious people in service learning are going, celebrities? That's not serious anymore. Of course, now everybody wants celebrities, but we did involve celebrities of all different kinds, from sports and from music and from theater, all people who really had great values and represented service in a really deep way, like James Edward Olmos and Christy Yamaguchi, and people that you just admired signed on to be part of this. It was quite exciting. We had a letter from George Bush about the importance, and we put together a packet of materials that went out in English and Spanish to every school in America to seed service learning. And this was back in the early 90s. We also ran the first 800 number for service learning in the country and fielded 40,000 calls in 3 years. This is very important in this transition from community service to service learning, just to start bringing up the term and making it more visible. Now, at that same time, I was out in Maryland designing the materials for StarServe, and I kept saying, where do you start with service learning? And I ask it in my workshops, and I bet you can guess the answer most people say is you start with the need. And I say, that's the second thing you start with. The first thing you start with is, it finally came to me in a hotel room about 2 in the morning while I was just going, where do you start? Because my mind would not stop asking the question. And it took me back to Sandy River School in Maine. You start with the students. You start with identifying their interests, skills, and talents. And that resonance in my brain affected me so deeply when I realized, of course, that's where you start. When you know their interests, skills, and talents, and then you take that and apply it to meet the need that they've identified and authenticated, that's where you have the catalyst for good service learning. And I figured that out in a hotel room late at night, probably because I was desperate for a good answer, but also because I couldn't stop asking myself the question until I really came up with something that I knew was right. So it was the convergence of working with Kathleen and StarServe that helped give me this real epiphany. And that's that's influenced my work in StarServe and ever after, that we start with the students and we help them identify their skills, talents, and interests, and then move that forward to really identify and authenticate a community need. I think these are some of the real critical differences that we grew to understand from community service to service learning. Community service today usually starts with the action, let's just do it, and they miss those seminal pieces, the investigation and the preparation before the action. So we've done much better. I think community service will always have its place, especially what a friend of mine, Chris Mannix, called compassionate service. You know, when something happens in Haiti or Japan or in the Gulf, we all really want to move now, and we need to do those things. However, we still, as educators, need to back end it, make sure students are learning about the issues. So it's not just a drop-in visit or something exotic. We really want to make sure this is service and learning.